No tree can grow its branches to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. What does this mean? When we call someone good, what do we truly mean? We look at their actions, their words, their visible behavior, but we never see the full architecture of their inner world. The truth is simple and unsettling. Every human being carries darkness within. Not evil in the theatrical sense, but impulses, instincts, unspoken desires, anger, jealousy, pride, fear. The question is not whether we have a shadow. The question is whether we have faced it. And there is only one place where such a confrontation becomes possible. Solitude. There is a profound difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is absence. Solitude is presence. Loneliness says, I am incomplete without others. Solitude whispers, I am ready to meet myself. Loneliness feels like exile. Solitude feels like return. In our modern age, we have confused the two. We think being alone is a defect, a social failure. But the great sages knew that the man who cannot stand his own company is a man in danger. Modern society fears silence. We flood our minds with noise, notifications, entertainment, endless distraction. We wake up and immediately reach for a screen, terrified of the split second of silence before the noise begins. Not because we are busy, but because we are afraid of what silence might reveal. In solitude, the mask begins to loosen. The roles we perform, the professional, the child, the partner, the friend, fade away. What remains is the unfiltered self, and that self is rarely simple. It contains both the white swan and the black swan, grace and instinct, discipline and desire. Without solitude, we live only as the white swan, controlled, acceptable, admired. But the black swan waits beneath the surface. Ignored long enough, it does not disappear. It erupts in moments of stress, in fits of rage, or in deep, unexplained depressions. To be whole, you must invite both swans to the table. The human psyche is not divided into good and bad people. It is divided into conscious and unconscious parts, the parts we accept and the parts we exile. This is what psychologist Carl Jung called the shadow. When we refuse to sit quietly with our own contradictions, they begin to govern us from beneath our awareness. We call it fate, but it is actually our shadow pulling the strings. We project these exiled parts onto others. The confident person becomes arrogant to us. The expressive person becomes immoral. The bold person becomes threatening. But look closely. What we often resent in others is a quality we have forbidden in ourselves. Solitude is the mirror that forces us to stop pointing fingers and start looking inward. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire of his time. He had every reason to be distracted. Yet his greatest battles were not fought on the frontier against barbarian tribes. They were fought within the silence of his own mind. In his private journal, he wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Notice the paradox. An emperor surrounded by armies and political chaos sought refuge not in a palace or a distant island, but in disciplined inner solitude. For the Stoics, solitude was not an escape from responsibility. It was training for it. To sit with one's impulses is to gain power over them, to examine anger before it becomes cruelty, to confront fear before it becomes cowardice. A person who has not met themselves in silence will always be a slave to their circumstances. Solitude sharpens awareness. Awareness creates choice, and choice is the foundation of character. History whispers the same lesson again and again. Nikola Tesla would walk alone for hours, constructing entire inventions in the silence of his mind, testing every gear and bolt before building them in reality. He understood that the friction of the world wears down the creative spirit, but silence polishes it. Virginia Woolf insisted that creative genius required a room of one's own, not just a physical space, but a mental boundary where the world cannot intrude. Albert Einstein valued long periods of quiet contemplation more than constant collaboration. He knew that while the crowd gives you information, solitude gives you insight.
Creation requires incubation, and incubation demands silence. When the mind is constantly stimulated, it can only react. It is like a pond being pelted by stones. The surface is always rippled, and you can never see the bottom. But when the mind is quiet, the sediment settles. The water becomes clear. Only then does it generate something original. Solitude is the soil where the seeds of genius germinate. But we must be honest. There is a cost. In silence, we encounter doubt. In stillness, we encounter our insecurities. In isolation, we encounter the parts of ourselves we have spent years trying to drown out with music, work, and alcohol. This is why most people quit. They enter the room of solitude, stay for 5 minutes, and run back to the noise because the shadow is too loud. And yet, every true transformation demands a descent before an ascent. Just as roots must travel downward into the cold, dark earth before branches can rise toward the warm light. You cannot have the height without the depth. You cannot have the wisdom without the confrontation. There are moments in life that demand softness, and there are moments that demand ferocity. A person who is only gentle becomes fragile, a victim to the world's harshness. A person who is only fierce becomes destructive, a tyrant to those around them. Wholeness is the balance of these forces. It is the ability to access your instinct without being consumed by it, to express strength without losing compassion, to embrace desire without surrendering your discipline. This integration cannot be outsourced. No mentor can do it for you. No book can replace the experience. No partner can carry this weight for you. And certainly, no amount of social media applause can fill the void of self-unawareness. It happens in the silence. When you sit alone, away from the influence of others, and ask yourself the hard questions: what do I truly envy? What am I deathly afraid of? What parts of myself am I pretending don't exist? What do I want that I am ashamed to admit? These questions are uncomfortable, they are heavy, but they are gateways. Without confronting the shadow in solitude, we remain incomplete. Fragile shells of humans, easily manipulated by trends, easily wounded by criticism, and easily controlled by our own hidden impulses. But with integration, we become grounded. We become unshakable. Not because we have become perfect, but because we have become whole. We finally know who is driving the car. At the end of this long transformation, something curious happens. The old, divided self begins to dissolve. In cinema, endings often fade to black. It represents closure, the end of the story. But in the journey of the soul, sometimes the screen fades to white. White does not signify destruction or emptiness. It signifies emergence, a new beginning. A blank canvas where you are no longer a victim of your past or your shadow, but a conscious creator of your future. A consciousness no longer divided against itself is the ultimate power. Solitude is not about withdrawal from the world. It is the ultimate preparation for it. It is where the roots descend, into uncertainty, into discomfort, and yes, into the shadow. We do this so that when we walk back into the light of the world, our branches may rise higher than ever before, filled with clarity, fueled by strength, and guided by wisdom. If you wish to grow beyond who you are, do not fear the silence. Do not fear being alone. Fear only one thing: living your entire life and never truly meeting yourself. Chronos wisdom. Time reveals. Silence transforms. Wisdom remains.